Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Sprinklebeard, and today we are going to do another Evaluate the Epic. So this is a re-record. I tried recording this once. I forgot something, and it was like super critical for what I wanted to do in the video. So we're redoing the video. So today we are talking about healers, and we are going to be talking about the Epic Healer LightLocke. So this is part of the beginning of the series where I wanted to focus on champions that everybody's going to have access to or could easily get by summoning out somebody like LightLocke. So with that being said, let's get into it.
Fear thy God and die well.
That was the wrong button. If we go to the summon button, there are a series of champions that you can fuse together. So we can fuse the fighter Komodo, the tank Livian, the archer Theowin, and then the healer LightLocke. Now, I would encourage for a brand new player playing the game, you start off with Camille, guaranteed. You absolutely get Camille as a healer, and she is a good to decent healer for quite a while. You can absolutely take her up to 4-star. She will carry your team decently in through the campaign, and you're not really going to notice a problem with her. The singular problem you'll run into with her is she doesn't cover the whole map, so you're going to need a second healer. So if you open up somebody like RN or Spring or Nuea, you're going to have a second healer for a bit. You can still take Camille up to 4-star, and obviously here we can see we can max her out and fully promote her. Aryn, you can take him up to 4-star. That's what I did on my very first playthrough. I ended up getting Aryn pretty early from a random shard. So after I got the two of them, they were my two healers for most levels for quite some time. So the reason I mentioned that these two healers is while you're going through the normal campaign, and this is something I encourage in general for new players, one of your biggest first goals in the game will be to get to normal 8-4. So that's level 8, stage 4 within it. And the reason that specific level is it's an experience grind. Once you can get to that level where you can then, cool, I can reliably level up my champions, or I can grind for experience so that I can fuse any of these champions that I might like. So if you love Theowin, you could go with Theowin. Or like me on the last account we played, if we needed a better healer for Dragon, we were struggling very heavily on just surviving Dragon, and our healer kept dying even at 4-star. So for me, one of the easiest upgrades for the account was, okay, let's take Camille, we'll fuse like LightLocke, and LightLocke started performing pretty well for us. So let's get into a review of LightLocke. We'll talk about where he's best used at, where he is worst used at, and why you may or may not want him. So LightLocke is a healer, position-wise. All of his attack radius, if you will, is in front of him, which is kind of the normal in the game right now. There are a few champions that can hit like one square behind them, or some champions actually spread out to the sides instead. LightLocke is just kind of your typical healer. Where LightLocke thrives specifically is single target healing. So when he can heal 1 to 2 champions, and it's ideally 1, if LightLocke can keep heal bombing the same champion over and over again, LightLocke, I would say, is near unchallenged. It's a really brilliant concept, and when you fuse him, it feels great, and his weakness, healing up everybody, becomes very apparent where you're like, cool, this is why I want another healer. Or, this is nice, I like LightLocke, but if I had an AoE healer, that would feel better. And to me, that is terrific game design. When you have a champion who feels good, but doesn't feel like broken OP. But what's funny is that when LightLocke can heal the same target over and over again, he feels good. He feels broken. When, I'm going to use the example of Arena. In Arena, when you get to single target, LightLocke can out-heal any damage on pretty much any champion. If that champion's like 4-star and above, LightLocke's gonna sit there and out-heal all the damage, which again feels good, feels great, feels amazing. So let's talk about his kit in general. So his talent is when Light of Cohesion is triggered, that's going to be his ultimate. We'll talk about that in a moment. The hero restores 3 extra rage. I'm sorry, Light of Cohesion is actually his passive. Messed it up already. Terrific. Single target heal. So grants attack-based healing to 1 ally in range. So what do we mean by attack-based healing? So if we actually click on this, it does tell us. So you LightLocke restores HP on the target's max HP. So we're going to say, going forward for the rest of this video, LightLocke is healing Wrath. It's just going to make a lot of conversations super easy. It depends on Wrath's maximum HP and the caster, LightLocke's attack stat. Then the healing effect multiplier comes into play. So when we talk about building him up stat-wise, we do want a high attack stat for LightLocke. We're going to talk about his passive next. His passive is that Light of Cohesion. LightLocke's attack increases by 10% for 15 seconds each time he heals the same ally, which can be stacked up to 5 times. He loses all stacks if he changes targets. This 10% can scale up to 15%. So instead of it being 10% times 5, so an extra 50% onto his attack, it can be an extra 75% onto his attack. Which, if you think about that's kind of some crazy numbers already, right? Then we're going to talk about his ultimate. As I am aware, LightLocke has the fastest ultimate in the game, meaning that he will cast his ultimate and then build up his next one back to back, the fastest with no outside interference, resources, or anything like that. His ultimate might feel a little lackluster until you get around to playing with it effectively. So what his ultimate is, it's an auto cast. Restores HP equal to 100% of the hero's healing multiplier for allies, and deals magic damage equal to 50% of the attack to their surrounding enemies. So when he's heal bombing that same champion over and over again, Wrath, he will then, on ultimate, cast this AoE Holy Nova to damage everything around Wrath. So here, the scaling for it, he can increase the damage from 50%, and it scales up to 70%. The healing multiplier can scale from 100% up to 140%. And when at max skill, like if you give him a bunch of dust and crystals, the skill cost can go down to being as low as 100, which it's one of those things, as you play with LightLocke, you're going to feel like this is already fast. It feels faster, right? That is a 15% increase, 120 minus 20. That is a 15% increase on speed. That is a lot. That is a very fast ultimate. His cost is 17. In terms of his stats are just kind of your good stats everywhere, right? He's got stats where we want them to be. His defense is quite low. However, we're never really depending on him as a tank, but understand that certain boss fights that you might take him into, if he is dying, that definitely means you want that armor piece on him to be better, or you definitely want armor that has attack percentage and healing effect on it. But then after that, if you get to gold armor with him, you definitely, like yellow and red armor, you definitely want him to have more defense or more HP. HP will benefit him a bit more, just because he already has a base HP, so having more base HP will help him more. But defense, like specifically defense percentage, would be best on him. Flat defense is also going to be useful. It's not going to be like a wasted stat for him. His attack interval is 3 seconds, which is pretty slow. This is kind of typical for a lot of the healers, because you don't want the healers, attack Gatling gun healing people so that literally there's never a chance of them dying. So a lot of the healers in this game do heavily benefit from attack speed increases. When we go to his awakenings, increases the splash damage of Light of Courage, so that's his ultimate, by 50%. So we said that tops off at 120%, I think it was 120 or 140. Let's go back and look. Extra damage is only 20%. So it goes from 120% to 170%, which is a lot. Increased attack, so that means his heals are bigger. and his damage is bigger. Light of Cohesion now stacks up to 7 times. So Light of Cohesion is that stacking ability where if he keeps healing the same target, the stacks keep getting higher and higher. So that 7 times 15 turns out to be 105. So you go from 75 to 105 increased attack damage if he keeps healing the same target. Rage Regen, +1 auto. So a lot of champions, they restore like 2 to 3 rage every time they attack. This would let you get to that ult so much faster. And then obviously if you pair him with things like attack speed, he just gets his ult nonstop. It's fantastic. Deals splash damage in a larger range. So in the Theowen video, we talked about how when he throws out his boomerang, and then when you awaken him to 5-star, it is massive. I am assuming this because I do not have LightLocke 5-star awakened. I have him like 4-star awakened because I got a bunch of him over the weekend. I would assume that his Holy Nova will feel that same way. I bet you it just covers a large area. Something that's ironic about LightLocke, even though he is not a DPS healer, there is a DPS healer in the game, a character that deals a lot of DPS and then can heal everybody around them by doing DPS. You're not necessarily wasting stats on him. So if you got something that is like a gear, and I'm making up things at the moment, but if you've got like, let's say a sword that has like attack percentage, healing effect, and crit rate, LightLocke actually would take advantage of all those stats. It's not that his heals can crit, however, his damage from his ultimate, it could crit, right? It is damage to enemies. It's an AoE attack. You could deal damage with him. I don't encourage this style for him. I would definitely focus on his healing and survivability. And instead of crit rate, I would much prefer attack speed on him, right? Get that slow attack speed to a much more useful thing, or that he can heal faster. And the faster he's healing, faster he can heal up everybody. So LightLocke, let's talk about where is he going to be best in. In the campaign, he is fantastic. Again, though, almost every healer in the campaign is going to do their job. The singular exception is the mass AoE healers. So that's champions like in your rares, that's like your Autumn. In your epics, that's like your Dolores. Dolores is not a healer. We will do a video on her eventually. Understand, though, yes, she heals, but you're not going to be depending on Dolores for her heals. And even when you get up to legendaries, some of the AoE healers will not feel nearly as effective as LightLocke in the campaign, because most of the time in the campaign, only 1 to 2 champions are ever taking damage. In the arena, if you ever have a time where your champion is taking damage, so right now we're in the anti-air DPS, none of your champions should be taking any damage. But when you get to like the single target, maybe the AoE, and then the last one is sustained, those 3 often will have a champion somewhere in the way and somewhere taking damage that you will need a healer for. Again, LightLocke is best when he can heal the same target over and over again. So if you're using only Wrath as your ground troop or your only blocker, LightLocke and Wrath will perform very well. Same thing too, if you end up using a defender, right? Let's say the AoE waves are just too much for you and you're like, nope, my Wrath can't tank it. Cool. Use a tank, use your Rex, use your Regulus, whomever you have, and then you can be constantly heal bombing that champion, and you can have your Wrath or your Ein off to the side or standing behind them for Ein's case, and feel like they're doing their jobs just fine. When we get into raids, again, I've said this with other healers and other tanks, it's wherever you might need them. So if your champions are taking damage in the promotion raids, so like Marksman, as you get higher up, the bees start attacking you back. Yes, you're going to need a healer in that. LightLocke will be just fine in those promotion raids. Mages, I can't think of an instance where your champions do take damage. You could have a fighter or a defender blocking one of the paths. So for that reason, yes, you could use him there. I would encourage you just use a different mage alongside, and the higher your DPS, the faster you'll clear the mage stuff, so that's not necessary. In the endurance, that's absolutely where he shines the most, right? Everybody's constantly taking damage. Understand, though, this is also where LightLocke's kind of at his weakest, is when he's healing up everybody. That's where his effectiveness tends to drop down significantly. In the melee attacks, he's very good here until you run out of platforms. Even when you get down to one platform, we have shown off some cheesy strategies where you can put an AoE mage on that singular platform, and they can tend to just clear off everything in the melee thing. Fighters at the beginning of the game, like when you're like, before you have any 5-star champions, a lot of fighters can feel very underwhelming because their gear is not high enough stats for them to do their job properly, or their base stats are kind of too low for them to do the job of tanking, putting out damage, and it being very noticeable over your mages. As you get to like 5-star and 6-star, and as you get yellow gear, that difference shrinks significantly. You'll find a point where you're like, oh, these fighters are really good. Or your fighters offer another utility, which makes them very fun to use. Guild boss. So I said earlier in the video that I fused a LightLocke for our guild boss on that stream account. We did do that because he is a more effective healer. Him being an epic did make him more effective at healing the party than characters like my Camille and Arin did. With that being said, though, Guild Boss is kind of LightLocke's one of his biggest weaknesses. Dragon is consistently attacking everybody, so his Flame Breath and his Roar hits everybody, and then his Dragon Claw will hit all your melee units. With that being said, LightLocke is still usable. Understand, though, you might need to place him in a position where, as he heals things up, they're in that front line. Maybe he's only healing your front line and himself as much as possible, and then you would have a second healer focus more on your back line, and you would intentionally have that distinction so that LightLocke is getting the most out of that ultimate that he has that bombs and spreads. Artifact Material Raid. You start off having like 3 platforms, so he's perfectly great in that because you are consistently healing up a tank, or that is the most common strategy. He's fantastic there. Eventually it gets down to 1 platform. I would still argue LightLocke is fantastic. In the video that I originally did for this, I did put some basic equipment on LightLocke, and he healed for quite some time. I was very impressed with how long he healed for. Tide. Every champion is good in Tide as long as their BP is high. I would argue LightLocke is a healer that can take the most advantage of the most stats. He's a healer that can benefit from things like crit rate and crit damage that would increase his BP. So therefore, he's kind of better in Tide than a lot of your other healers that might not focus on that, whereas they have a higher demand to be focusing on that healing effect, which you just might not have the gear for. Resource Raid, honestly, I would say most players do not use a healer in Resource Raid. Maybe at the very, very beginning of the game when you start doing Resource Raids, yes, you'll need a healer there, so he's excellent. Understand, though, you will get to that point where you start out-damaging the waves very quickly, or you could work on an AoE champion so that you don't need a healer, that you're killing things so quickly that your champion at most loses like 10% of their HP. Gear raids. So each of the gear raids is subjective, right? If you need a healer, LightLocke is going to do amazing in all 3 of these. Gear raid 1, he's particularly effective because if you have a champion like Wrath out on the ground level, you're constantly going to be throwing this AoE bomb on top of him, which means that AoE Holy Nova is going to hit all those waves of enemies, and they are all weak to magic damage. So he's particularly great there. Gear Raid 2, everybody is constantly taking damage, and often you have 2 tanks. Those 2 tanks will be tanking most of the damage. So with that being said, LightLocke is fantastic there. Gear Raid 3, it's not often that the enemies attack you until you get higher up, but as you get higher up, the enemies do start attacking you. LightLocke can top people off very quickly. However, his Holy Nova becomes a lot less effective because majority of the time, the enemies are not close enough to you that you'll ever hit them with Holy Nova. However, there are times that the enemies come moving in, and sometimes that little bit of extra damage is all you need to polish them off. So I would not discount him in Gear Raid 3. I would say, though, this is one of the ones where, kind of the sooner you get a different epic healer, that other epic healer could be better for you. Again, though, LightLocke is designed to keep one champion up most effectively. That is where he will shine. So if you only have one champion taking a whole lot of damage in Gear Raid 3, LightLocke will absolutely feel amazing. Faction Trials. So in the Faction Trials, he's part of two different factions. The North people, who I just end up calling the Nordic 99% of the time, and the Watchers. Again, if your champions are taking damage in the North, they will absolutely take damage. LightLocke is a fantastic healer to have and will absolutely help your faction trial for the North. In the Watchers, and over here in the All section, where you get to use any champion, LightLocke again is fantastic. You're going to be taking damage in these levels in some way, shape, or form. So if you were taking damage, you absolutely are going to want to have a healer that is constantly keeping everybody up. And, LightLocke is going to do his job fantastically. So again, to reiterate a shortcoming, and then I'm going to talk about some really cool synergies that LightLocke has over a lot of other champions in the game. His shortcoming is definitely the more people he's healing, he's going to be healing them at the base level. You're not going to stack up that passive. And understand, in this game, it is a strategy game. So if you were able to enable that stacking, he will feel absolutely terrific and he will feel unmatched as a healer. But if your whole party is constantly taking damage, if you're fighting a boss and the boss is doing these big AoE bombs that hit your entire party, understand, LightLocke can still heal up the whole party, but he'll be healing them up at base. You're not going to be hitting these huge numbers that he can stack up to. You're going to need to kind of set him up for success in that regard. Some really cool synergies that I really want to focus on, and this is what I forgot in the initial recording of the video, is that LightLocke, as mentioned, he has one of the fastest ultimates in the entire game. Where this matters is there are other champions that gain benefits from other champions using their ultimates. So some of the most simple examples that I can give, I'm going to go down to the mages first, and we have Laurel. Where is it? So Laurel here, her passive is grants damage increase for 5 seconds to allies every time they use their ultimate. However, this effect won't trigger on her own ultimate. So her damage increases 10%, and then if you skill her all the way up, it becomes 20%. So an additional 20% damage after all your gear factors are in. And Laurel only costs 13 to summon. I don't remember her full stats. So she does have a low attack stat along with like Mari and such. So we're not going to be counting on Laurel for huge damage numbers. She's all about giving rage regen to everybody in your party. But the fact that LightLocke, who is basically going to be spamming his ultimate, I'm dead serious, it gets down to like 4 or 5 seconds. He's just non-stop. He heals 2 or 3 times, he's at full bar, and he will ult instantly. And then it comes back up again. If this happens, right, for 5 seconds, every time an ally uses their ultimate, Laurel and LightLocke side by side could just do some ridiculous nonsense. Her talent also increases his rage regen by 1. So she would be filling up his rage regen faster. His faster rage regen causes her to buff up the party for extra damage. You can have these 2 people in your party just doing some severe work for your party. And then even better is that damage increase still benefits LightLocke. So that the synergy between these 2 champions is just absolutely brilliant. Another champion that LightLocke would heavily synergize with, and I'm looking forward to doing the video on her, is Idril. Idril, or sometimes called Toriel, and there's lore reasons behind that. Not lore reasons, there's other reasons behind that. She has this ability passive called Combo Shots. So each time an ally casts their ultimate, this hero's next attack will do 50% increased damage. So airborne units take 30% extra damage instead. I don't know why the airborne units take less. that almost feels unnecessary because she's already so good at killing aerial units. But with LightLocke, again, if his ultimate is going off every like 3 to 5 seconds, because that's what my LightLocke does, every 3 to 5 seconds, Idril is doing an extra 50% damage. It's kind of nuts to think about, as long as LightLocke is healing, right? As long as something's taking damage, that LightLocke is just spamming his heals out, because he can't ultimate if he doesn't have a target to heal. But understand, as you get further into the game, and there's always a reason units are taking damage. Like, the further in you get in the game, somebody's taking a whole lot of damage. You'll need a healer. LightLocke and Idril can have this great synergy where he's just constantly proccing this. What's also fantastic is that when Idril ults, her range becomes the entire map. She can hit every single square on the map. So when she's in her ultimate, and then LightLocke ultimates, that can cause her passive to trigger. So instead of her attacking 2 times at a single enemy for a total of 80% damage each time, now she's attacking a single enemy 3 times for that 70% damage. So that would be 210 damage. That gets increased by 50%. So as you can see, the damage with LightLocke can absolutely stack up. A recent conversation I had, I haven't been able to confirm this. However, the more I play the game and the more I see everybody's accounts, I would say this is a confirmed fact, is that when you are opening up shards early in the game, your first epic is guaranteed to be one of 4 piercers. So it's either Brienne, Idril, Tazira, crap, or Theowen. Yeah, Brienne, Tazira, Idril, or Theowen. Completely forgot about Theowen. You are guaranteed to get one of these 4 champions very early on. So for those of you who get Idril, she's an absolute monster single target killer and amazing boss killer. There's a lot of hilarious boss shenanigans that you can kill off the waves and then just ult with Idril, and she'll shoot the boss and like reduce his life by half. It's fantastic. As you get further into the game, she gets to that point where she just starts killing bosses by herself. With that being said, the video focuses on LightLocke, not Idril. It is a lot of fun to have an ultimate that is constantly going off like that. And with the fact that it being auto, along with Wrath's ultimate being on auto, if you have Wrath and LightLocke and then champions like Idril or like Laurel, you can get some hilariously big numbers just jumping up because of the amount of ultimates just constantly going off and benefiting everybody in the party because of it. I did want to show off one level with him, so we'll do an artifact material raid to show off where he is best at. Right now, my LightLocke is not geared, so please understand that when I do this, this is him with 0 gear on. And the reason I'm also doing this with 0 gear on is, even though it's a lot more impressive to see with the gear being on him. Mouse, please. Mouse. Thank you. Ready or not, this is oh my goodness. Mouse, don't do this to me again. Mouse! Holy shnikes. Glad I caught this on video. There we go. Follow the light. This is where LightLocke will be his most effective. It's healing one person up over and over again. That's fine, I don't care. Embrace the light. Oh my gosh. This mouse is going to be the death of me. But here you can see, with 0 gear on him. Oh, I'm sorry, no, LightLocke does have some gear on him. I just have not geared him up in a very long time. I 100% misspoke. But you can see, even with some basic gear on, nothing too impressive, the more times that he heals him, he's getting up to 21,000, you know, consistent healing. No problems. And again, his attack speed is quite slow here. So it is one of those things that I would encourage. Attack speed is very effective on him.
Let me handle it.
But ironically enough, we are getting to that point where as he heals up, more people, you see those numbers drop way down and then go back up again. This is where LightLocke is going to feel his most effective, though, is single target healing as much as possible. Yes, if I had placed 6 champions around Salazar there, Salazar was the boss of that level. Yes, LightLocke would be have to heal up everybody. That's okay. It's just not going to be those huge 23,000 numbers. It was going to be closer to those like 14,000s that he was starting off on his base level. Guys, that's all the time I have for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you saw, go ahead and hit that like or subscribe button down below. That way you get to see future videos, and I'll be doing more Evaluate the Epics coming up. If you prefer to watch me live, I do stream on Twitch. Right now it's Sunday through Wednesdays pretty reliably. I work Wednesday through Saturday, and I work 12-hour shifts, so during those days I'm just not really available, or I become a lot less available during those times. Thank you very much for watching, but of course until that next time, ta-ta.